The slow destruction of my marriage. Here we are again, sitting in the waiting room in front of the office of the marriage therapist my wife chose for us. We meet with her once a week, and this is our 12th visit. The therapist doesn't know it yet, but this is also our last visit. I have a surprise for both my wife and our therapist, and in the future they can get together without me to figure out where they went wrong. My wife can pay. You've heard stories about therapists like this one, but I never thought I'd be dealing with one. I call her the charlatan. She's a man-hating fool, and there's nothing complicated about it. She lives to make excuses for women and their bad behavior. My wife chose her despite my objections. Big surprise. We could have chosen a legitimate therapist together, interviewed them, developed mutual trust in the one we chose, and moved forward to do the hard work together. But that didn't happen. Ruth needed a deck so she could control the appointments. It's not that I object to therapy. I just don't think it's therapy. Every complaint from my wife comes back to me saying, "David, you need to realize that you have not been providing for your wife." Well, at least that ends today. I suppose it's worth doing a little review of what brought us to this point. We got married right out of college 25 years ago. We have 2 children, a boy and a girl, and both are in college. They are great kids, but don't ask me how. I tried to be the best father I could be, but my wife went missing so often that my own children jokingly called me Dom in the daddy-mommy sense when I tried to fill the void. The first time they did this, I took offense, but quickly realized that they could see that I was both mother and father to them. I made their school lunches, helped with homework, took them to little leagues and soccer games, met with their teachers, and most of the time, I cooked dinner and did the dishes. My wife's contribution seemed to consist of complaining about how important her low-paying job was, complaining about me, and being too tired to do anything. That's not entirely fair. She did contribute, but over the years, she seemed to be less and less involved with family and more preoccupied with life outside the home. Complaints about work were replaced by complaints about me. I never did enough, or I didn't do it right, or we didn't have enough money, or we didn't take the best vacations, or whatever else she focused on because of her dissatisfaction. The kids saw this, and as they got older, I started hearing it a lot. "Daddy, you're the best." And that gave everything that was going on meaning. You know the old, "How do you boil a frog?" story. I was that frog. Well, that frog finally got fed up, and I jumped out of the pot. I spent most of my adult life trying to figure out what was wrong with my wife. She grew up in a dysfunctional family, the kind of thing you could read about in horror stories, if horror stories were about parents who stalked their children. Her mother was a serial adulterer who used her daughter to cover up her infidelities. As a child, she was taught never to tell her father what really happened during shopping trips. Her father wasn't stupid, but he was a weak and, as you can imagine, broken man. He was a mouse that growled, so painfully shy he could barely hold a conversation. He'd stop by for a drink after work, and when he got home, he'd raise hell. The house became a battleground where there was no real communication, no time together, no joy. As a child, my wife would see night approaching, gather something to eat, and stay in her bedroom to avoid hostilities in the rest of the house. Is it any wonder she became the way she did? Deception and manipulation were her lot, and it took me decades to realize that she was deeply broken and could never truly live in a marriage. That realization softened the pain, and my love for my children kept me going until they were grown. I sat with a therapist for a while. I explained to her what my pattern of behavior was, told her about Ruth's childhood, and kept asking what I could do to fix the slow destruction of my marriage. She patiently explained to me that she could only help the person in front of her, and that was me. She taught me to take care of myself, to stand up for myself, and not to be sucked into the pit of an empty life that Ruth's existence had become. I learned to focus on my children, to live for them, and to keep the door open in case Ruth ever decided to enter the family. Now that the kids were in college, I realized the end was near. I couldn't go on like this and was almost certain that Ruth would destroy our marriage very soon. You see, my own therapist explained to me that when a child grows up in chaos, they adapt to it. I know it sounds crazy, but she said that when things were good in her life, Ruth would blow things up because chaos is what she is most comfortable with. That was a revelation. I thought, I'm not crazy after all. I saw the pattern, but I didn't believe it. Now that the kids were off to college, our finances were under control, the house was almost paid off, and the two of us had enough free time to enjoy time together. She was destined to ruin everything. My musings were interrupted when the door to the inner office opened and another couple entered the waiting room. The husband looked tearful, and the wife looked smug. The quack had earned her paycheck for this session. By then, I already knew the routine. We were waiting for the quack to write her notes on the last seance, and then the door opened. "Ruth, I'm ready to meet with you and David." It was her way of saying, "I've cleaned up the blood, so bring in the next victim." Ruth settled on the couch, and Quack always expected me to sit next to her, but this time I chose the chair to Ruth's right, with my back to the door. "David, please sit with your wife. I'm sorry, but I can see her better from here. Besides, my back hurts, and this couch has never been comfortable for me." Boy, that was an understatement. Quack looks annoyed and says, "David, don't you have anything you want to say after our last meeting?" "Yes, I do. We keep coming here, supposedly working on our marriage, but I still can't get over the idea that my wife is cheating on me. I can't get over it, and nothing that's been said here will change my mind." Quack didn't even wait for my wife to speak. "David, I've already told you that I'm absolutely certain that Ruth is not cheating on you. She and I have talked, and I'm convinced it's all in your mind. You need to drop it and move on." She doesn't even wait for my response. "Ruth, what do you want to talk about today?" She wasn't subtle in her preconceptions, was she? Ruth went through a mental list of my shortcomings and settled on, "He doesn't support me." That was all it took, and she let loose. "He complains when I work late, and I just want to go out with my friends sometimes to unwind," and blah, blah, blah. Ruth complained, and Quack nodded. It was like every session. I knew Ruth would go on for a long time, so I let my thoughts wander. Early in our therapy, in one of our one-on-one sessions, before I even realized our therapist had an agenda, I told her that I thought my wife had been unfaithful in the past. I had no proof. It was just a feeling. The quack shut me down, dismissed the very thought of it, and told me it was all in my head. 2 months later, my doubts turned into certainties, and her opinion faded into the past as I prepared for war. The preparations took some time, but... "David? David, are you listening?" "Ah? Oh, yes. I have heard. I'm not supporting her. Ruth said you ignore her and her needs. You don't support her when she needs to work late, and you're jealous when she wants to spend a few hours with her friends." "Well, I keep coming back to the feeling I have that she's not faithful to the marriage." Now Quack couldn't hide her contempt. "David, pull yourself together and be a man. I told you she's not cheating on you. Your wife needs a man who can take things on, but if you keep acting like this, maybe she should find someone else." Quack only shook her head in disgust. "Ruth, you said..." "He doesn't take care of the house like he used to. He doesn't mow the lawn when he's supposed to. The house needs a new coat of paint, and blah, blah, blah." I thought, I could call that tune in 3 notes. I guess I gave away my thoughts. It was careless of me. "David, what are you grinning about? This is serious work we're trying to do." "Sorry." And with that most insincere of apologies, my thoughts began to wander again as my wife spoke. "Ruth always insists on driving her car to our meetings with Quack. I'm at work, but I could easily pick her up and we'd drive together. No, that's not going to work. Also, for some reason, she's never free in the afternoon after our meetings. I procrastinated, I admit it, but I finally got to the bottom of it. I hired a private investigator to follow her starting in the afternoon after our meetings. Of course, after each meeting, she met with Bill Peterson at the Best Western Hotel off the highway. I expanded the coverage, and now it happened every Thursday, but only on Thursday. Why weren't they running off every chance they got? It soon became apparent that this was not a new thing and had been going on for some time. That's when it hit me that she was keeping him at a distance. Even with her adulterous boyfriend, she couldn't risk letting him get too close. She was deeply broken. They had a standing order, which made it easy for my private investigator to sneak a camera and recorder into the room. After seeing this, therapy became just a waiting game for me to get all my ducks in a row. I now had 3 opponents to crush: my wife, Bill, and the quack. When I was ready, I visited Bill's wife and gave her copies of all the documents. She utilized the services of my attorney. She was not a very healthy woman, which caused me some apprehension, but the lawyer assured me that with her long-standing physical problems, she would be able to get him off the hook. That sounded like the kind of revenge I was looking for. David? David, are you listening? Ah? Oh yes, I heard. The house needs new paint. Well? At that moment, there was a knock on the door. Who is it? Quack stood up. I'll get it. It's for me, anyway. For you? David, it's a seance. It's sacred time. What does it mean to arrange something outside of... I didn't give her time to finish. I opened the door, and there stood Bill and his beautiful, albeit frail, wife, Marie. Welcome, welcome. It's about time. I'm glad you could make it. Come on in. Bill looked confused. Marie looked like a determined woman. Her hand shook with neurological weakness as she placed her cane on each step, but she walked purposefully into the room. Bill clearly didn't know who I was. He held out his hand and said, "My wife made this appointment. I honestly don't know why we're here." Well, let me explain, Bill. Turning to my right and pointing to my wife sitting on the couch, I said, "You know my wife, Ruth, don't you, Bill?" I had heard of it, but I had never seen it before. The color disappeared from his face and he turned pale white. I didn't... You don't have to lie, Bill. We're all friends here. Therapy sessions are a safe place. I stole that phrase from my first session with the charlatan. Coincidentally, that was the moment she decided to speak up. David, what is going on here? How can you interrupt a session like that? I'm sorry, Ms. Jacobs, this is Bill Peterson. He and my wife have been having an affair for almost a year now. And before you say it's all my imagination, I have numerous pictures and videos of the two of them having sex at the Best Western. Turning to Bill, I said, Bill, why don't you sit next to Ruth? If you can have sex with her, at least sit next to her while we deal with this unpleasant matter. Then, turning to Marie, I kissed her cheek and said, Marie, it's always good to see you. Would you like this chair? It's surprisingly comfortable. Smiling, she sat down and stared at her husband. I sat in the chair across from her, so the coffee table was between us, Ruth and Bill to my right, and Quack to my left, continuing to make guppy faces. Mouth opens and closes, but makes no sound. Well, isn't this great? Marie, you look beautiful as always. How are you feeling today? Better than usual, David. Thanks for asking. I think a weight will be lifted off my shoulders soon. I smiled at that remark. Marie was a woman with real problems and a difficult future. Her optimism and cheerfulness were inspiring. Ms. Jacobs told me that all my thoughts about Ruth cheating on me are only in my head. Marie laughed. I looked around the room. Who wants to see the pictures? I brought my tablet if anyone wants to watch one of the movies. Looking at Quack, I said, How about you? Do you want to watch that asshole seduce my wife in a novel you told me didn't exist? No? You're quiet all of a sudden. Turning to Bill, I said, You know, Bill, having sex with my wife is one thing, but I've been her husband for a long time, and despite her lies and betrayal, I still have a sense of responsibility for her well-being. Don't you ever just make love to her? Or maybe that's not what she's into right now? I looked at Ruth. Maybe if I knew you wanted to be treated like this, you wouldn't be making love to that vile coward behind my back. I never would have thought it, but she was actually sobbing. To my shame, I couldn't understand it. Obviously, she knew our marriage was over. Bill's marriage was over. Now she could be with Bill all she wanted and any other man she wanted. So why had so much water gone down? All she was losing was me, and she was making it clear that she didn't need me, except that maybe she needed me for the emotional stability she couldn't provide on her own. Ruth finally found her voice. I didn't want you to find out. I'm sorry, David. I never meant to hurt you. And so on, listing all the cliches of cheaters. It was so pathetic it was almost funny. Stop pouring water, Ruth. You've had a year to think about your actions. Looking at the pathetic excuse of the man sitting next to her, I asked, And what is your excuse? Your wife gave you 2 children who are now grown and living on their own. She has special needs and you repay her by sneaking around? Have you ever once in your life thought about being a man, recognizing your responsibility and being honest with someone? I could see the anger rising on his face, and I was more than ready for it if I had the chance. But I didn't. The 2 of them ended up sitting like that, offering worthless excuses and empty apologies, until there was another knock on the door. Oops! I looked at Marie. Looks like our latest guest has arrived. Quack had been surprisingly silent up until that point. This caused her a second explosion of indignation, to which I simply shrugged and opened the door. A middle-aged man in a cheap suit entered the office, and I pointed him to the couch. That's them. He walked over to the 2 crooks, handed them each an envelope, and said, Ruth Harper, Bill Peterson, you've been subpoenaed. Then he took a picture and turned away. That was the end of it. I guess it was the first time he had ever served someone in a marriage counselor's office, because as he walked by, he gave me a sly smile and quietly left the room. I closed the door behind him and returned to my seat. What a day it's been, hasn't it? I can see by the wall clock that our hour is running out. Perhaps Ms. Jacobs will spend the last few minutes with the tricksters to help them figure out what happened here today. I turned to her and added with more than a touch of sarcasm in my voice, and maybe you can figure out how you could have gotten it so horribly wrong. I stood up, helped Marie to her feet, and took her hand as we walked out of the office. Walking slowly down the hall, I asked, Are you going to be all right? I think so. When you first showed me the evidence of their betrayal, I was confused. I thought, how could the man I married do this to me? I know now that he is not the man I married, nor the man I thought I was marrying. All I'm losing are the memories or the illusion of what I thought I had, but didn't. I felt like she was speaking for both of us. She looked at me and said, I still have children and grandchildren coming in a few years. I'll be fine. You also have friends. Don't forget that, and maybe in time you can count me among them. She smiled a sad smile, patted my hand, and replied, I already am. In that case, what do you say to having lunch with a friend? She smiled her first real smile of the day and replied, I'd love to. We both drove to lunch in our cars. It began with a melancholy meal as we each silently recalled the sad events of the day. We knew this was going to happen. We had planned it together. And yet it was the end of 2 marriages and the life we had built and thought was ours. We talked about the 2 of them for a while and finally decided it was time to move on. We talked about our kids and everything that was going on in our town. We even discovered that we had a few mutual friends, and I knew they would be supportive of both of us. You know that when this is all over, our friends are going to try to get us blind dates with all of their single friends. At that thought, I involuntarily flinched. She laughed softly and said, It won't be that bad. Who knows? You might even like it. All I had to do was shake my head and sigh. As we talked, I became more and more optimistic about our future. Eventually, I returned home, not caring where the tricksters had gone, individually or together, or how they had gotten there. Perhaps they went together to plan a mutual defense or seek lawyers, or maybe they just went on their weekly date. More likely, she had given him a ride, since Marie had their car. Of course, it was never that simple. Coming home later, Ruth went over every possible apology she could think of. She even threw in a few rebukes, because we all know, when a woman cheats, her husband must be at least partly to blame. I wondered if Quack was still coaching her. When she finally ran out of breath and sat sobbing, I decided it was my turn. I spoke briefly and matter-of-factly. "Ruth, for all the time we've been married, I've felt sorry for you. The home you grew up in was hell on earth. I knew you were wounded by that life, but I thought you came out of it virtually unscathed. I thought that if I provided you with a truly loving marriage, you could heal and become the woman I knew you wanted to be. What I didn't realize is that you are incapable of healing. You are deeply broken. With every progress we've made, with every good fortune we've had, you've ruined everything. You are incapable of being happy. All you know is sadness and destruction. I can't live like this anymore, and I don't want to live with a liar and a cheat. It's over between us, Ruth. The children are grown, and it's time for us to go our separate ways." I gave myself a moment to think before I finished what I wanted to say. You need help, Ruth. You need real therapy, not this charlatan who tries to validate everything you say and justify everything you do. And when you find a therapist like that, you need to let him control the sessions. I know you, and you need to be in control. You won't get where you need to go if you control the swimming. You need a real professional to guide you through the process of introspection so you can get rid of the ghosts and demons that have haunted you since your youth. Please promise me that you will get real help." I doubt she heard my words. There were too many obstacles in her brain preventing her from accepting the admonition, and the sad truth is that she was too much of a coward to face her demons. I confess that the decision to divorce Ruth came hard to me. I kept going back to my vows and remembering in sickness and in health. There was no doubt in my mind that Ruth was not well. I finally decided that sick or not, Ruth knows what is right and wrong, and betrayal remains betrayal. 3 years have passed since that fateful meeting with the therapist, and I have moved on with my life. The divorce was finalized a little over 2 years ago. We split our lives in half, and I was ordered to pay alimony for 3 years, less than a year to go. What I have learned from all of this is that when love dies and anger subsides, what remains is a deep sense of sadness and loss. I lost what I had, but I lost it long before the divorce, and I lost what I could have had if I had it at all. However, you can't go through life focusing on what you've lost. I moved across town, kept the friends who over time became the best therapy for me, and rebuilt my life with a new focus on the things I had always enjoyed and had given up too often because my wife wanted different things. In the process, I met a wonderful woman who shares my interests. We've both been burned before and are in no hurry. I'm optimistic, but I'm in no hurry. As for Bill, he got a pass. I wasn't about to go to jail just for a little revenge. Moreover, Marie needed him to make a living so he could pay for her upkeep. I guess he got what he deserved. I guess the whole sad experience taught me an important lesson. I realized that we can build a good or even better life if we remember who we are, look forward, and take advantage of what life offers us. As for my ex, I doubt she will ever be happy. It's just not in her character to take the joy that life offers and live it. She will always be looking for something more than what she has, losing what is most important, all the while refusing to put a piece of herself into the lives around her. I feel sad for her, but I know now that I can't change who or what she is, and all I can do is move forward. The end. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.